79, 80, 81, 82. Oh, hold on a second, guys. I'm doing math. 83. Okay, 5. I think it's 5. Okay. Hey, everybody. How you doing? Techie 101 here, and welcome back to the 5th consecutive chapter in a row where none of the Straw Hats have showed up. And listen, I don't want to say anything bad about the Straw Hats. I love the Straw Hats very dearly. I have a giant statue of Frankie in my garage. But I'm just saying, 5 chapters where none of the Straw Hats have showed up, and these last 5 chapters have been pretty solid, you know? I don't really think we need the Straw Hats around anymore. Give me Shanks, give me Garp, give me Buggy, give me Aokiji. This chapter, a lot of Sabo action going on, you know? I think we'll be good for the rest of this manga. The Straw Hats carried their weight, alright? Usopp carried this stable for over 1,000 chapters. It's okay for them to take a break for a while. Just let Buggy run out the rest of One Piece. It'll be fine. Alright, so this will be One Piece, chapter 1083 review, titled The Truth About That Day. Yes, and it's a very important day because we're talking about the time Sabo walked in on the ruler of the world. Now, we don't actually learn about that in this chapter, but we get the setup for it. We get the setup, okay? Actually, you know what? Let me talk about the cover page really quick. It's just another fan art request somebody made to Oda, but it's one that's rather interesting to me. So, somebody requested, I don't know why, Doflamingo tending to a fallen baby chick by wrapping his boa around it and, you know, fixing its wounds. So you have Don Quixote Doflamingo. Don Quixote Doflamingo sees an injured bird, just a helpless little chick on the side of the road, you know, falling out of a tree or whatever. And so he's like, aw, and he takes off his big boa, his big feathered boa that he has, and then he puts that on the ground, and he sets the chick in it, and he takes out a little Band-Aid. Like, this is what Oda drew. And I'm just sitting there, and I'm like... And to be fair, Doflamingo does not look like he's happy about this. He honestly looks like he's annoyed that he's helping this poor defenseless animal. But I have to say, if there was any One Piece character that was so irredeemably evil where they would see a helpless baby chick fallen out of its nest and injured its leg, if there was any One Piece character that would laugh at that and then step on it, that would be Doflamingo. I don't know if you can see him in frame, but he's right here next to Blackbeard, okay? So, it's just a fan art cover, I get it. It's just that, like, oh, aesthetically, and just kind of just amusingly, because it is Doflamingo, it would be an interesting cover page to see him tending to a wounded animal, okay? But, yeah, I think, like, in the real events of the manga, I don't think this would go down like that. Maybe Doflamingo has a soft side. Maybe this is the beginning of the Doflamingo redemption arc. We all want that, right? Doflamingo redemption arc? Okay, and so we're continuing on right where we left off last chapter. We're at the Kamabakka Queendom in the Paradise side of the Grand Line. This is the new headquarters for the Revolutionary Army, and it seems like now that Sabo is back, everybody that's anybody is really there. Dragon is there, the Supreme Commander of the Revolution. Sabo, his second-in-command, the Chief of Staff. Ivankov, the leader of the Grand Line branch, as well as Inazuma, his Vice Commander. We also have the 4 other commanders, Morley, Karasu, Lindbergh, and Bello Betty, that are all present, as well as their vice commanders. We have Ahiru. We have 3 other people whose names I forget. One dude is the gambling guy, which his name literally indicates gambling, so he might have some kind of devil fruit that involves gambling. I'll just throw that out there because someone brought that up last time. And then the dude that might have some kind of ability that he can, like, eat physical matter, or he can turn... Somebody actually said he cannot eat physical matter, but he takes food and turns it into something else. Like, he could take an apple and then turn it into a pair of binoculars, and that's what he was using, and then he was eating the binoculars because it still has the consistency of, like, an apple. I really like that idea. And then there was the cow mink, Ushi something, because Ushi means cow or bull. So, yeah, Ahiru's the coolest because she has, like, a mechanical arm that can, like, fire lasers, so pay attention to her. Anywho, so, we cut to the castle. So this is Emporio Ivankov's castle on Kamabakka, where you have Ivankov, Dragon, and Sabo meeting in like a meeting room. None of the other commanders are there. We actually see Morley outside of the castle with the other members of the revolution, just kind of excited that Sabo is back. There's also, remember, all the survivors of Lulusia that are there as well. So they got to get them all sorted out, brought up to speed, taken care of, and I guess they're going to be trained in the revolution or whatever, okay? So we have Sabo recapping the events of the Reverie. This is a big deal. Reverie occurred in the manga back in 2018, all right? So this is already 5+ years now that we're finally finding out what happened during that moment. It's been hinted at before, like we know that the Revolutionary Army commanders clashed with Fujitora and Aramaki. You know, we know that happened, but it was never actually shown. So this is kind of starting the flashback with Sabo as the narrator explaining how all this went down. So Sabo begins his debrief, so to speak. He's like, all right, so we had 3 main objectives when we went to the Holy Land, you know. So you have Sabo, Karasu, Lindbergh, and Morley. Bello Betty stayed behind on Kamabakka, so she was not there. So you had 4 commanders of the revolution that went into Marijois, specifically into the domain of the gods, where only the Tenryubito and their slaves and their servants are only supposed to be, and they went in there, okay? The first objective of their mission was to destroy the symbol of the Celestial Dragon. So at the center of the Celestial Dragon city, the domain of the gods, there's this, I'm assuming it's gold, I'm assuming it's this giant golden hoof of the Celestial Dragons that's right in the center of the city, this very gaudy kind of thing that's like lit up and it's really super fancy and it's inlaid with diamonds, and that's like the symbol, the grand symbol of the Celestial Dragons, okay? The hoof of the dragon, right? So their first objective was to blow that thing up, and they did. So like that was destroyed, okay. Second objective was to rescue Kuma. More broadly, it was to free as many slaves as they could come across, okay? So they did in fact rescue Kuma. That's sort of relative because they brought him back and then he immediately activated and then shot off back toward the red port, but hey, you did rescue him, okay? So we don't know what's up with Kuma. We don't get any updates there on what he's doing at the red port, but I'm assuming he's still climbing the wall. Also to free as many other slaves as they ran across, okay? The third objective, and this was something that we did not know about, and it's actually very interesting to showcase Dragon's strategy on dealing with the Tenryubito, all right? Because since they are located at the top of the red line, this immovable continent, this wall, all right, attacking them with a large army is going to be pretty much nigh impossible, all right? The amount of times that somebody managed to get into Marijois is even pretty rare. I mean, we have the Iron Giant, that was 200 years ago, that was rampaging a little bit. We have Fisher Tiger, but I mean, he's a certified badass. Not many other certified badasses on the level of Fisher Tiger pop up every once in a while, right? Getting an entire army up the entire sheer cliff of the red line to attack the actual city en masse, that's going to be pretty difficult. However, anybody that knows about tactics involving warfare way back in the day before guns existed, what do? It's not always about just cavalry charges and armies, right? And it's like, charge, men! I mean, that's cool, but what's another way you could do it? A good old-fashioned siege, that's right. So basically their third objective was to destroy the Holy Land's food reserves. And this was an angle that I didn't even consider. So they're sitting there and they're talking and it's just like, yeah, you know, Ivankov even brings up like the Holy Land is on top of the red line, which is this fortress. Geography is everything. But because of that, they rely on supplies from the lower realm. Like, you know, food and other kinds of sundries and rations and supplies they have to get from below, because the red line itself, it doesn't really look like there's a lot of arable farmland up there. Now, to be fair, when we did see Marijois, we saw a lot of artificial grass and we did see trees and forests. But, you know, that might just be more for show. That might just be more for aesthetic purposes. Like, it's a far cry. Like, it's one thing to make some astroturf to look like, oh, look, there's grass over there. Oh, there's some trees over there. There's a long cry from that and like, oh, we have wheat fields that we can supply for years and years to come. Also, keep in mind, I mean, the red line is way up there. I mean, it's like easily 5,000 to 6,000 meters above sea level. It's still kind of up in the air exactly how how high up Marijois is. I like to think it's slightly lower than the White Sea is. The White Sea is 7,000 meters above sea level, and the White Sea, where Skypiea was and everything, that's 10,000 meters up. So I don't think the red line is quite that high, where you're hitting Sky Islands, but pretty close. So maybe 5,000 to 6,000 meters above sea level. The ability to grow things in terms of farmland, I mean, you'd have to look into it. I know there's a lot of places in the Andes, down in South America, down in Argentina, Chile, and those kind of places that are really high elevation, but people still live there and they farm and all that stuff. You know, like the Incans did that for years. So it's possible, but probably not as simple. And also keep in mind, these are the celestial dragons, okay? So they don't want just like, you know, oh yes, we want some corn for dinner. No, they want like the fanciest of the most fancy of the most expensive meals possible, okay? And you can't just get that up in Marijois. So a lot of this stuff has to be brought in from the lower world. So they had a food reserve. They had like a granary up there in case of emergencies, like, oh crap, we ran out of food supplies, so we can access that. Okay, well, Sabo blew that up. And also Ivankov brings up that like, as we speak, the revolution is underway, and all of the world government carriers and stuff like the food merchant ships and everything like that are being destroyed. Maybe not destroyed, but are being stopped from reaching Marijois. So they're basically going to, you know, lock them into a siege where the Tenryubito are going to know poverty and hunger just like everybody else in the world that is under their thumb. And then Ivankov is, of course, just like, we shall teach them the meaning of poverty and hunger. Hee-haw! Which I love Ivankov. Ivankov is honestly one of my favorite One Piece characters. I am so glad that he's back in this chapter. We've seen him before, you know, like every once in a while, but like Ivankov is just like kind of front and center here. I think I'm just gonna make him the thumbnail. Why not, right? So, Dragon goes on to say that because of the actions that occurred at Reverie, we're going to backpedal a little bit here and explain exactly what went down, like with the newspaper article that everybody was crying over, like what happened with Sabo and Cobra, you know, we'll get to that later. But they bring up that the effects of what occurred there led 12 nations to openly rebel against the world government and refuse handing over the heavenly tribute and their resources over to the Tenryubito. That is a big deal. Now, granted, Dragon mentions, out of the 12 nations that rebelled, only 8 were successful. And those 8 include Lelucia, and Ivankov even mentions, well, it's kind of a stretch to say 8 were successful when one of the islands got nuked out of existence. So, really, technically speaking, only 7 were successful in that their rebellion occurred. And I guess when they say successful, I mean like it was a successful revolution. The people in these countries stood up and they overthrew their kings or queens or princes or whoever ruled them, their dictators, whoever it was. They overthrew them, and now it's the people that are in the power of these 7 nations establishing a new government, okay? One of which was probably the dude that we saw, remember, it was in a few chapters ago. It was actually in the Flame Emperor chapter, right after One Piece came back from that break last summer. We had that dude with the bandana that had like revolution on it, and he was like talking to the people like, we stand with the Flame Emperor, Sabo! You know, that was probably one of the nations that it was successfully liberated. As for the other 4, I don't know if that means that the revolution has been completely quashed in those 4 nations. It could just be that they haven't succeeded yet, or the battle is ongoing. Of course, it could also mean that the people tried to stand up in those particular islands, and maybe the kingdoms in question fought back and managed to crush the revolutions altogether, or maybe they had the Marines helping them, or maybe they had assistance from the world government, or Cypherpole, or something like that. But the point is, these are 12 nations in the world that were allied with the world government that were then in open rebellion. That is not something to sneeze at. That is not insignificant. I think Spondum mentioned back at Ennie's Lobby that the world government had around 170 plus nations that were allied with it. So out of 170 nations that are allied with the government, 50 of which get to attend Reverie every 4 years, the representatives of the 50, I would assume most successful out of those nations, get to attend Reverie. If these 12 nations that were in open rebellion rebellion, even the ones that failed at that rebellion, are part of the 50 that attend the Reverie every 4 years. That is significant. That is over 1/5 of the, you know, the Reverie Council have their countries in open rebellion. Okay, that's a big deal. All right, and the 7 that succeeded are kind of just doing their own thing right now, waiting on orders from Dragon, okay? So that's a really big deal. Now, Dragon is a little bit less boastful about this. Dragon's off to the side, and he's just like, all right, well, we might have not have been able to, you know, cut off all of their supplies. You know, they still will get some supplies. But you have to understand, Dragon has been building up this army for decades now, at least 2 decades, a little bit over 2 decades from what we know. It started out as just a slapdash group of freedom fighters. I don't know how long the revolution has been up and running as like an actual proper organization with bases in all 4 blues and the Grand Line. That's probably only been within the last decade or so. But still, Dragon knows how to do this shit. It's not like he's just like, okay, we're gonna get some people together and then attack. No, it's like, in order to make this work, we need to establish bases all over the world. And now it's finally bearing fruit, where he is disrupting the government's, specifically the Tenryubito's, supply network, okay? Now, it's not just the Tenryubito that live at Marijois. It's all the servants, it's all the, like the Gorosei and everybody like that are up there. And, dude, if there was like, I'm just saying, if like I was a guard working at Marijois, and it's like I lived up there and I had a family, and it's like, so the revolution is cutting off food supplies up here, so it's looking like we're not going to be able to eat. They also blew up the food reserve granary, so who's paying us to guard all the celestial dragons? Guess not. We can't get food. So, dude, if there's some turmoil going on upstairs, if the guards are starting to, like, turn on everybody, I mean, who, aside from Eam, who is up there at Marijois that could really be strong enough to fight back? I guess Cypherpool Zero. That's the answer to that, Cypherpool Zero. And so actually there's another group too, another group that is not Cypherpool Aegis Zero that Dragon mentions, and he's like, the real fight's gonna begin now, because the Celestial Dragons are not just gonna sit back while we destroy their food supplies and, you know, force them into a siege. And so this is where Dragon mentions God's Knights, or the Holy Knights. There's different translations here. And we get a silhouetted view of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I'm assuming there's 10. They're like the Espada. Okay. And so we get a silhouette view of the God's Knights in the background with Dragon looming over them. He mentions that these are their strongest warriors. Okay. So this is fascinating because I assumed the God's Knights were like a judiciary body that handled stuff up above. You know, like if there was a dispute, and they probably are this as well, but if there was ever a dispute between 2 celestial dragons, who mediates that? Who decides? Well, it's God's Knights. I thought they were just like a kind of like a Supreme Court sort of setup. You know, they were a bunch of old dudes sitting at a long table and be like, St. Charles, you have accused St. Mjoldsgard of hitting you in the face. And just then they, you know, have a trial or whatever, right? So they probably do stuff like that. But from this panel and how ominous Dragon is about this, they are a supreme fighting force, okay? And I would like to think that this group of God's Knights are actually taken from Tenryubito. Most of the Tenryubito we see are, you know, the pompous, rich, kind of just like, oh, yes, I love my caviar, yes. We see them, like people like Charlos, people like Roswald, okay? However, the Gorosei are also members of the Tenryubito, and we can see they don't act the same way. They might be arrogant as well, but they understand the world. They're in a position of power. They don't just sit around, well, they actually kind of do just sit around on a couch all day, but they have importance with that couch. That's the room of authority, right? So I like to think maybe there's another set of the Tenryubito that are meant to be a fighting division, the Holy Knight, God Knights, Warrior Edition, okay? Where, you know, they take a Tenryubito from childhood and they train them in all of the arts, and they get the greatest, you know, I was like gonna say coaches. They get the best coaches from all over the world, or like trainers or whatever, so they'll have like a hockey master, okay? It's like, here, he is the foremost master of observation hockey in the entire world. He will teach you how to master it and see the future. This is the foremost master of armament hockey in the world, and he will teach you armament. This is the master of conquerors. Here is a master, maybe if they have devil fruits. This is somebody that can teach you how to use devil fruit abilities, you know what I mean? So it's like this group of privileged warriors would have the greatest privileges ever, to be taught by the strongest masters of pretty much every discipline and martial art in the entire world that the government could recruit and pay, all right? So this group is not to be treated lightly. This group is not to be looked at in a similar vein of like, oh, they're Tenryubito, so they're gonna be weak. You also bring up the Cypher Pole Zero, which are supposed to be the bodyguards for the Tenryubito. I imagine those, like the Cypher Pole Zero are there to carry out the will of the Tenryubito, but this is their A-team, all right? This is who they bust out when shit really hits the fan. This is their last-ditch effort kind of thing, okay? Because we've never heard of God's Knights up until, like, the last, you know, like within the last 50 chapters. I think they were first mentioned by Kuro Uma, Black Horse, who was a member of the Marines, like, detective division, was the first person to bring these guys up, right? So it's kind of a situation, I think they might have been mentioned before that actually, but it doesn't matter. Point is, they haven't really been revealed yet, and we're 1,000 chapters into One Piece, okay? So it's like, yeah, for most of the stuff, they send a servant or a guard to do it. If it's a little bit more important, they'll send Cypher Pole Zero to do it. But if they have to resort to God's Knights to actually mobilize and do stuff, whoo, and Dragon's even kind of like ominous, like if they get involved, this isn't going to be a cakewalk. It's not going to be easy. Now, most of them are in silhouette. We see some of them are short, some of them are tall, some of them look like they're wearing hats. And then right in the center, almost like it's deliberate, almost like it's like Oda's drawing their silhouettes in the background, and he's like, all right, there's one of these God's Knights, one of these silhouettes that's really gonna stand out. And there's really no other way to say it. The silhouette looks exactly like Shanks. We have an outfit like a cloak that has like the high collar, what Shanks wears. The hair looks similar to Shanks. He has a sword that looks remarkably like Griffin on his right side. So he's kind of standing like this, well, in the silhouette, and it's reversed in the camera, but it's kind of like the sword is here, and it has the grip too. It's like a saber, similar to Griffin. And a lot of people have been thinking about this. A lot of people have been jumping to the conclusion, wait a second, does that mean Shanks is evil? We knew it! No. I don't think this is Shanks. Some people have thrown out the idea maybe it could be Shanks' Seraphim. I don't think it's Shanks' Seraphim. Although, that, now that I'm thinking about it though, I mean, God's Knights, they apparently have been around for a while, so I hesitate to say they're Seraphim, but dude, how cool would it be to have a team of like Seraphim Shanks, Seraphim Big Mom, Seraphim Kaido, like in their prime? Seraphim Whitebeard. That would be really cool. That would definitely be intimidating, but I don't think that's the case. Because remember, during Film Red, we got a name of a family that apparently lived at Marijois. And so the name of that family was the Figarland family. Now, in the movie Film Red, they assumed that Uta was a member of the Figarland family. However, and because she was the daughter of Shanks, okay? So Uta is not Shanks' biological daughter, so she would not be a member of this family, but in a roundabout way, that kind of confirmed that Shanks' family name is Figarland, okay? So, with that being said, I'm thinking this is another member of that clan. So this could be Shanks' brother, could be Shanks' dad. I'm kind of leaning on brother right now. Shanks has a brother, maybe it's even a twin brother that uses a sword and has the same level of power as Shanks. He just went a different road and got taught by the masters of hockey and everything in the world, whereas Shanks, you know, he ended up in a treasure chest at God Valley, and then boom, Roger found him and he got his strength another way. But yeah, I don't think this is literally Shanks. I don't think that would even work, and that would also explain why Shanks was able to meet with the Gorosei. If his family was a Celestial Dragon family, and if his brother or whoever actually was like a member of the Holy Knights of God's Knights, then it would make sense on how Shanks could get into Marijois and have a private meeting with the Gorosei, the strongest, well, purportedly the strongest force in terms of like authority in the world, right under Eam, okay? So, yeah, that's my opinion on that. All we have to go off of is a silhouette. With that being said, the silhouette is very clearly indicative of Shanks' character, so that's where I'm going right now. Shanks' long-lost twin brother. How about that? Okay, great. So, next up, they begin mentioning the fact that Ivankov brings up, say, so, Sabo, how do you feel about the name Flame Emperor? Ho ho! And then you have Sabo, who's just like, I'm not really too hot about that name, personally. Okay, so, we begin to talk about Cobra here, all right, and what happened with with him. And the situation, okay. So Dragon is like pouring a drink, and he's like, well, you know, there's a lot of horrible, like, dictators in the world, right? That mistreat their kingdoms and everybody that lives under them. They're like despots, basically. King Seki, who was the vampire dude, did that with Lulucia, all right? Doflamingo, of course, did that with Dressrosa, okay? However, he also mentions there are plenty of other kings that are really, really benevolent, are very nice to everybody, okay? And Cobra was certainly the paragon of that. However, they bring up certain nuances like that are kind of lost on the general public when you're trying to raise a revolution, okay? So the idea that Sabo is in the paper over the dead body of Cobra, even though Cobra was a good man, definitely Sabo's approval ratings probably aren't doing that well in Alabasta right now. But from the rest of the world, especially all those other nations that are openly rebelling, they don't view it as Sabo killed the kind and benevolent and nice and charitable King Cobra of Alabasta. How dare he? No, they don't view it like that. They view it like, oh yeah, Sabo took out another dog of the world government, another king that answers to the top brass of the Gorosei and the Tenryubito. He took out a member of the Nefeltari family. Flame Emperor! Flame Emperor! Woo! You know, that's how they're gonna view it, all right? That's how most of the world views it. And Sabo says that it might be taken as kind of callous, and Sabo even says so. He's like, this might sound a bit cold of me, but even though that did happen to Cobra and he died, it kind of really helped our cause. It kind of really helped the revolution, all right? I'm under the impression Cobra is straight up dead. I don't think he's going to show up alive later. Maybe he will be, but I really doubt it. I gotta tell you, if Cobra did die, kind of in a similar vein of T-Bone, where if Cobra died, but it's like, okay, my death will eventually lead to a revolution that will topple the Tenryubito system and will change the world for the better, I kind of feel like Cobra would have been okay with that, you know? Probably is not okay with dying and leaving his only daughter behind, so definitely not on the same vein as T-Bone, where T-Bone probably would have happily just like, oh yes, take my sword and feed your family with my bounty, you know, stuff like that. Cobra probably didn't want to die, but it's like, alright, if Cobra's ghost is out there in the afterlife, it's just like, hey Cobra, your death kind of helped us change the world for the better. Cobra's like, oh, I guess that's cool. Kind of would have wished to hang out a little bit more, but alright. That's how it goes. So, we see the paper. We see the headline news that shocked the whole world. And, yeah, it does look pretty bad for Sabo. You got Cobra lying on the floor somewhere in Marijois, covered in blood. Like, he's on the ground, just blood splattered all over his head. Like, he actually suffered some kind of major chest wound, is what it looks like. His wheelchair's next to him, so he fell out of his wheelchair and somebody, like, stabbed him or struck him, like, right here in the heart. And then you have Sabo standing over him. Hold on a moment. Yeah, you have Sabo standing over him doing this. So probably like he was communicating with somebody, probably with the other members of the revolution, like, hey, Morley, Cobra's here. And then that was when the picture was taken, okay? Pretty bad. Pretty bad. And I could see what Morgans was going for here. I could see Morgans looking at this picture and being like, oh, this is the biggest news! You know, I could see that, really. I mean, honestly, it's like, okay, a little bit of a hypothetical here. Imagine you walk into a room. Like, you open the door to wherever you're staying and you walk in and you just see a dead body just hanging out, like, right there in the center of your house or your apartment or whatever. And there's, like, a giant butcher knife sticking out of the body. And you're like, oh my god! And you go over and, like, look at the body and you, like, pull out the knife and it's, like, covered in blood. It's like, oh my god, what happened here? And then at that exact moment, cops burst in, like, SWAT. It's like, what's going on? Get off the ground! And you're like, no, you don't understand! And you're, like, waving the knife around. No, you don't get it! I did not, you know, yeah. It's not looking great for Sabo. Morgan's definitely sold a lot of, special edition newspapers on this one. Yeah, it was all just a coincidence. Obviously, Sabo wasn't the one that killed him. They even brought up, you know, it's like, hey, we lost a lot of sleep. Ivankov and Dragon are like, hey, we lost a lot of sleep over this. We cried a lot over this. Now tell us the story from your perspective, because Sabo, it's kind of interesting because because the way Ivankov says this, we're desperately seeking an explanation. Please. All they wanted is to believe in you. I was trying to do Ivankov's V thing, but I ended up sounding like a vampire. Zabo, we want to believe in you, blah! So, I don't know, the implication is just like, we trust you, Sabo, but, man, this photo looks... You gotta explain here. So, this is where we go into a flashback of Reverie. This was a month ago. That's what the narrator box actually says. 1 month ago at Marijois. So keep in mind, Reverie has now been going on... Well, since Reverie started, a month has passed. And that was the whole events of Wano and everything. You know, like the 2 weeks leading up to the Fire Festival, and then the festival itself, and then a couple weeks after, and then Straw Hats hung out there, and then they finally left and went to Egghead. So it's been about a month. About a month since, like, chapter 905 to 908. Like, around there, okay? Which is nice, because we don't always get, like, passage of time in One Piece in that way. So, okay. So, yeah, Sabo and the rest of the commanders, they basically just launched a full-on assault on the domain of the gods. They weren't really coy about this, or just like, oh, we're gonna do this stealth. You know, no, I mean, they're setting fires, they're blowing stuff up. I mean, it's a revolution, man, okay? So, you actually get to see all the Tenryubito running through the domain of the gods. It's just like, oh my god, they blew up the caviar repository! Whatever shall we do? It's like, it's okay, as long as they don't destroy the Farguar factory. Boom! They destroyed the Farguar factory! No! All the fancy foods are destroyed! Whatever will I have for my third dinner? Okay, I find it hilarious to have, like, the Tenryubito freaking out over this stuff, you know, because they've never dealt with anything on this scale, right? Also imagine the Tenryubito are not going to be happy with like canned beans and vegetables, you know, for their meals. They want the fanciest of the fancy. That's the kind of stuff that was in their food reserves. Just because I was curious, I looked up on what the most expensive food was in our world to see kind of approximating what the kind of food the Tenryubito would demand for like every meal. And it actually does tie back to One Piece, because everything ties back to One Piece. Bluefin tuna, specifically like Atlantic bluefin tuna. There was a 600-pound tuna that sold for $1.8 million. Okay? And there's other bluefin tunas that sell for hundreds of thousands of US dollars in Japan at like the fish markets and stuff for like sushi. It is a extraordinarily bougie, high-tier ingredient, okay? Which ties back to One Piece, and you can understand why Sanji was so excited back at Logtown when he won the elephant bluefin tuna. All right, no, I think in the anime there was the cooking contest where he won it, which makes a lot more sense for the anime to have a cooking contest rather than him just, I think he just bought it in the manga. But there was also a lot of stuff in Logtown that Oda omitted that he wanted to include, because Sanji just finding like the rarest tuna in the entire world and then buying it is just like, wow, this was really expensive. It would make sense if it was in a cooking contest. Remember Carmen? I remember Carmen. Anyway, so yeah, it all ties back to that. So that's the kind of food though that like the Tenryubito eats for like every meal. They're demanding like the finest cut of sea king meat out there. Ah yes, Saint Roswald, this is the flesh of a sea king that lived 10,000 years and attained enlightenment. We killed it and then grilled it for your pleasure. Takes one bite of it. It's not to my liking. I don't want a 10,000-year sea king. Bring me a 7,000-year one later. Yes, sir. And he just like chucks it in the garbage. You know what I mean? That's the kind of crap they're probably pulling anyway. So they're running through the city, and then it's like, it's the 4 captains of the revolution, what are we gonna do? They of course bring up, it's like, oh my goodness, the jealousy of the plebs, of the peasants of the lower world, does it not know any bounds? They're so jealous of us and our status, they have to attack us. Even when they're running away, they could still just be the most horrible people ever. There's a woman that's very scary, and her line is like, oh yes, after we round up all the revolutionaries and eliminate them, then we will round up all of the soldiers and bodyguards in our city and kill them for allowing this to happen. I think she actually calls them to be beheaded. No, just executed, but probably beheaded, you know. So, dude, even while they're running away in terror and they're asking for help because none of these guys have any fighting ability, they're still like, who do we kill for this? Well, after this is over, I think we should kill all the guards. Like, yes, I do too. And so they're like, that's all they know how to do, right? Is just to, like, torture people. By the way, right? Here's a member of the Tenryubito we've yet to meet yet. His name shows up later. What's his name? It's Saint Pluming. Saint Pluming. I don't know if that means there's a Pluming family, because like Saint Charlos is a member of a different family. Saint Charlos and Saint Roswald, that's not their family names. So Saint Pluming. Anyway, he's like violently whipping his slave, who is a pirate, and he's wearing like the pirate outfit, and it's the same thing that the Celestial Dragons always do. Like they ride on the back of their human slaves, and it's just like, move, you slave, move! We have to get out of here! And of course, the pirate is just like so weakened and bloodied, he can't even barely move, and he like collapses. And Saint Pluming gets off, and he's just like, "Oh, you fool! I'll do it myself. I guess I'll have to walk myself today as the whole city's burning down. Consider yourself fired." And he takes out a gun, and he's about to shoot the poor guy right in the face. But then, boom! A crow swoops down, and then takes away the gun. And then you reveal Karasu in all of his glory. All right. So Karasu's there. He saves the man. There's another crow that kind of goes over and talks to the pirate, and he's like, escape through the east exit, and he's just like, oh, okay. And so he gets going, and then all the chains in the area are broken. The chains that are like holding down the slaves are shattered by Lindbergh, who flies in with a laser gun. Lindbergh invented a laser rifle. This is going down, all right? The freeze gun was cool, but Lindbergh, laser gun. This is where things get good, right? So he's got the laser gun. We have Karasu there. We do get the name of his devil fruit ability. Karasu consumed the soot fruit. Now, this is a really interesting idea. When Artor and Gemini did their little Return to Reverie fan chapters, they assumed that Karasu had a Logia, and it was the Tartar fruit. So it wasn't exactly right, but it was pretty close, where Karasu does not have a zone that allows him to turn into birds, because it would be a little weird, because it's very different. It would make more sense if he had a Logia, and he's able to turn his body into crows. Now, even with that being the case, which seems to be, because the guards all come out, just like the random, you know, the guys that wear the suits and have guns and don't really have any battle capabilities, they come out and they start shooting at the revolutionaries, and they're like, shoot the guy made out of crows, men, don't stop until there's nothing left. All right. Da-da-da-da-da-da. They just start unloading on Karasu, and then literally he just, he's probably a Logia, so it just, the bullets pass through him, and he just disperses. So it's like, shoot him until there's nothing left. Oh, wow, there's really nothing left. All right, men, good job. But of course, he's not really hurt. So Karasu just turns into soot and just, like, you know, slithers around them while they're emptying their rifles, and then, like, eliminates them all at once. While Lindbergh is like the eye in the sky, and he's shooting the laser guns, and he's releasing all the slaves. Now, keep in mind, the slaves are freed from their shackles, from their chains, but they still have the detonating collars around their neck, because the Tenryubito are very thorough with this, if nothing else. So they still have to get those off, and that's a real trick. Unless you have Rayleigh or Luffy or Hyogoro hanging around that knows advanced armament, you can't get those things off without the keys. So Sabo's gone off to look for the keys for these things. And so then Lindbergh is up at the sky, like telling everybody to be like, go to the east exit, go to the east exit, get out of here. And all the slaves are like, oh, thank you so much, flying cat man. It's like, Lindbergh, you know, I love Lindbergh, okay? Steampunk cat mink, love him. But in the background, there's an explosion, and Lindbergh's like, oh man, the admirals are coming, let's go, you know? So then we cut to Morley. And this is incredible. Morley is clashing with Aramaki one-on-one. Now, Morley, keep in mind, is a giant. She is the smallest tier of giant. Oda mentioned that in order to be considered a giant, you have to be at least 12 meters tall. Now, 12 meters is nothing to laugh at. It's pretty, you know, it's pretty large. But you got to keep in mind, like, Dory and Broggy are like well over 20 meters. I think Hyrudine is over 20 meters. And then you start getting into ancient giants like Oars that are well into like 50, 60 meters and some such, right? But so Morley, I think, is the shortest giant in One Piece, and she's around 12 meters tall. By the way, just for the pronoun thing, it was mentioned as the same thing at Morley's situation, very similar to Okiku's, the heart of a woman or a heart of a maiden. And so just like with Okiku, I use female pronouns for her, I use female pronouns for Morley, okay? Because it seems to be the exact same kind of situation between both of them, all right? So Morley is clashing with Aramaki, and Aramaki is in his full plant form, like he turned into the giant tree, like he's Treebeard, okay? And they're just like clashing in the center of the courtyard. Morley has the power of the push fruit, which allows her to manipulate the ground. She takes like the pitchfork and like, you know, puts it in the ground and kind of molds it like clay and can kind of arrange it in like little, you know, caves and stuff underground. Morley is the one that created New Kama Land at Impel Down. So level 5.5 was created by Morley when she was in prison there. So that's a useful use for the ability, but also to like attack the ground and send waves of earth at the enemy. So, you know, very, very powerful devil fruit here, especially used by one of Morley's size, okay? So you have Aramaki in his tree form that's like clashing with Morley, and it's like a kaiju battle, and it's destroying the city. So you have all the Tenryubito that are running away, and they're like, stop the revolutionaries, Aramaki, and then Aramaki will like step on like a building and it'll just blow up, and it's like, you know, you're just as bad as they are. Eliminate them, but don't destroy us, don't kill us, you know, you will be punished for this, Aramaki. So it's like, Aramaki's supposed to protect the Tenryubito from the revolutionaries, but it's kind of hard to do that when there's all the Tenryubito running around and you can like step on them by accident, right? So Aramaki is just like, oh my god, could you guys please just get out of here so I can fight? Then we have Fujitora, who's off to the side, and he's just like, alright, I think I'm just gonna call in a tactical meteor strike. And all the Tenryubito are like, don't do that! It's like, why? It could take care of the situation. You can't! I kind of love Fujitora, though. He's just like, I can end all of this shit right now. You know, Fujitora is a very moral individual. The fact that he is there helping the Tenryubito and their slaves probably eats at him in a similar way that it would have Garp, you know? So I feel like Fujitora, part of his brain is kind of working right now, like, if I summoned a giant meteor to just obliterate everything, to just wipe out the domain of the gods and Marie-Joie, like just completely just drop a meteor on top of the red line, crushing Castle Pangea. That would kind of solve the problems. I mean, Fujitora would die in the process, but like, oh, do I call in the meteor strike? Probably not, you know, but that, I mean, if that would kind of, I mean, Morley and Karasu and Sabo would all die as well. Vivi would die as well. Lucci would die, though. Man, this is a hard balance here. Yeah, but Eam would probably, no, you know what? Knowing Eam probably has some magic ability to, like, block the meteor anyway, so it doesn't really matter. But Fujitora is there, and then where we cut to outside of the domain of the gods, where a group of Cypher Pole Zero agents are watching the battle unfold, and, like, the entire domain of the gods is, like, undulating. Sorry, Murphy. Undulating, you know, behind it, because Morley is using her push fruit ability to like change the entire terrain of the ground, and then you have Aramaki, who's literally a tree man that's like creating a bunch of trees and forests and like stuff, so the entire ground is just going crazy. And so these members of Cypher Pole Zero that are out, you know, watching this unfold are in fact some familiar faces that we've already met back at Eni's lobby. So we see Jabra, Blue and O, Khalifa, Fukuro, and Kumadori. Now, we already knew that, if you saw film Red, you already know that Khalifa and Blue and O were confirmed to be members of Cypher Pole Ages Zero. We saw Khalifa there wearing the new outfit during the movie. Blue and O, I think this is the first time we're seeing him wearing the white suit of Cypher Pole Zero, because in the movie he was wearing like the Uta outfit, like he was undercover in the movie. But this is the first time we're seeing Jabra, Kumadori, and Fukuro since the time skip, and they are all wearing, they have a new outfit. Jabra is wearing, like, he always had like the Chinese martial artist kind of like outfit aesthetic going on. It's the same deal except it's colored white. Kumadori's same deal, and then Fukuro actually wearing a white suit, but he has a pair of like little bi-spectacle like John Letting glasses on, but his head is huge. Okay, so they're all outside just watching this kaiju battle, and they're like, yeah, should we go in there and deal with that? And think they're just like, yeah, they're no pushovers. Maybe we should just hang back for a moment. So I'm glad that Oda included them here. You know, we could always assume they were members, like if Lucci and Kaku and Spondum even, and then we saw Khalifa in the movie. If they were all members of Cypher Pole 0, then the whole group of Cypher Pole 9 became members. Going back to the independent report, they defected, and then after the time skip, they're now working for the government again. So there's definitely a story there. Maybe they're working undercover or waiting to bide their time until something happens. But yeah, all the Cypher Pole 0 agents are here. All the former Cypher Pole 9 agents are here. Except for Nero. I guess that just means he's dead. Frankie killed him. No, actually, no, wait, no. Lucci killed him, right. Yeah, Frankie knocked him, he defeated him on the sea train. He got up, tried to run away, and Lucci killed him. So yeah, Nero is dead, unfortunately, but yeah. So we, after this scene with the Cypher Pole, we now have Sabo running through the castle, and Karasu's speaking to him is kind of like urgent, you know, because Morley can only hold them back for so long, and so, you know, Karasu's on the phone with Sabo, and he's just like, hey, man, have you gotten the keys to the slaves' detonating collars? We gotta get moving, we gotta get out of here, we got Kuma, everything's good. Well, we don't have Kuma yet. That's what Sabo's doing. Sabo is in the Pangea castle, and they notice that Roswald and Charlos have Kuma as their slave, and they're walking through the hallways, and Charlos is still dedicated on making Shirahoshi his, because, you know, he attacked her in the Mingling Plaza, and then Mjolsgard smacked him with the club, okay? And so I always thought it was a piece of wood. I always thought it was Mjolsgard hitting him with a piece of wood. No, Mjolsgard took an iron club and smacked Charlos in the face. Makes it even more enjoyable. But even with that being the case, Charlos is still undeterred from all this. That is how much of a scummy person Charlos is. He's still like, I want to make the giant mermaid mine. I want to make her my pet, Daddy. And then Roswald is like, okay, son, we'll go get her. Don't worry. We have the strongest slave, PX0, to help us, you know? So that's what they're doing right now. They're going to look at Shirahoshi. We see Shirahoshi, and we don't hear her say anything. We just see a scene with her, and she's holding somebody up. And I'm trying to... I don't think it's revealed in this chapter who this person is, but Shirahoshi is holding somebody up and is talking to them in the palm of her hand. It's not Sabo, because he's going after Charlos and Roswald. We see Bonnie in the immediate next panel, but it can't be her, because Bonnie is racing around trying to find her father, you know, Kuma. You know, it's not Vivi that Shirahoshi's talking to, because Vivi is actually at the Bondola port, where the Bondolas go back down to the Red Port. That's where Vivi's at. So, who else could this be? Unless it is revealed. Let me know if it's like, oh, Tekking, it's obviously this person who she's talking to. But no, it just seems like she's holding up her hand, and there's a person talking, and she's smiling, like she's happy to talk with them. There are speech bubbles in this panel, but the speech bubbles are Sabo and Karasu's conversation that's happening off screen while Shirahoshi's talking. So I don't think it's revealed who it is. Could be Rebecca, could be Mjolsgard maybe? Not sure, but let me know what you think. So now we cut to last scenes of the chapter, last page of the chapter. We have the Bondola port where Vivi's at, and so they're about to head back down, I guess. I guess this is near the end of the Reverie, and so I guess Cobra told Vivi to like, yes, Vivi, go to the port and wait for me. I won't be long. I just need to have a word with the Gorosei. And so Chaka and Pell went with Cobra, and then I'm thinking... yeah, it's Igaram probably went with Vivi to bring her back to the Bondola, to bring her back down to the Red Port, and then go back home to Alabasta. And so she's there at the Bondola port, and so is Lucci. And Lucci is there, and he's just like, I am sorry, princess, you are not allowed to leave. You must stay here. And then Vivi's just like, you know what? I about had it enough with you guys. I'd just rather have Garp, you know, escort us. Garp escorted us here. He can escort, well, he didn't escort us here, but he did Fishman Island. But he's like, I would rather Garp help us, not you guys. And Lucci is like, oh, do not worry, princess. We are members of Cypher Pole 0. We will protect you all. And then Vivi's like, yeah, protect us all, just like you did Shirahoshi, huh? Yeah. And even Lucci a little bit there is kind of like, he just kind of like, I don't get paid enough to deal with this, you know? I don't know. Vivi, by the way, Vivi has gotten a little bit spicier since the last time we've seen her. Now, granted, Vivi has always been one to voice her opinion, but, you know, I think the events of traveling with the Straw Hats and sailing around on the Grand Line, I think that have definitely changed her a little bit. She's definitely got more of an attitude now, you know what I mean? So it's good for Vivi. Now she's voicing her opinion. She's just like, she's getting ready to just like slap Lucci in the face and just go back in, you know what I mean? So we have that with Lucci and Vivi at the Bondula port, and in the last scene of the chapter, we have Cobra and his two guards, Chaka and Pell. Chaka, if you don't remember, is the guy that has the Jackal Zone, and Pell is the guy that can survive a nuclear bomb blast. Okay, we're all on the same page here? Okay. And so Cobra's in his wheelchair, and they're approaching the Room of Authority, from what I assume. And we have guards standing outside, and they're just like, we are sorry, but only Nefeltari Cobra has been given authority to enter the Room of Authority, to have an audience with the Gorosei. You guards will have to stand outside the door, you know, Chaka and Pell. And they're like, oh, no, we should go with you, King Cobra. And he's like, please, Chaka, Pell, go back to the port and keep an eye on Vivi. She is a rather rambunctious person. She might get into trouble. This won't take long. I just have to speak with them about a certain matter. And then, boom, end of chapter. No break next week, yeah. So, we had a lot of breaks, too. So, we had 5 chapters with no Straw Hats, but there was a lot of breaks in there, so it's been several months now. But anyway, yeah, that's the end of the chapter, and I'm assuming the next one is just going to pick up right where we left off, because we're already in the middle of learning about... It was teased for so long what happened to Cobra and Sabo. It would be such a move to like, alright, we're going to reveal half of the story and then not cover the rest. So, in the next chapter, we will see what happened. We will see Cobra's meeting with the Gorosei, what they discussed, what Cobra wants to bring up. That's another thing that's just like... I think Cobra wants to mention something involving the ancient weapons. He wants to mention, like, hey, my kingdom was almost completely taken over by Crocodile because of these ancient weapons. So what aren't you telling us? You know, that kind of stuff. Where is it? Do you know about this? What's going on? He's going to be asking the wrong questions, and he's going to get stabbed from the back. And then right as soon as he gets stabbed in the back, that's when Sabo's going to bust through the door or in the window, and he's going to land right there next to his body, and they're going to snap a picture, and Sabo's going to be like, what? Huh? What? Oh, Cobra! You know what I mean? It's going to be some situation like that, I guarantee. So, sorry, Cobra. Probably next chapter is probably going to be the last one where we see him alive in the flashback. Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if the next chapter was titled, like, because Oda will do this whenever a character dies, usually, like Ashura Doji, this happened with him. I believe it happened with Ace as well. Next chapter might be, like, King of Alabasta Kingdom, Nefeltari Cobra. And it might be that, and it might be a lot of the chapter having like a philosophical, political conversation between Cobra and the Gorosei, and then somebody shows up and stabs him in the back. One of God's Knights might actually be the assassin that does it. Something just clicked. Remember back at Impel Down when Doflamingo's in prison, and he's like, they're going to be sending assassins down above, you know, to attack me, right? It's going to be one of God's Knights that's going to kill Cobra. Because we're introducing the God's Knights now. It doesn't make any sense for Cobra to die from a random guard to stab him in the back. Or one of the Gorosei, like Samurai Gandhi, pulls out the freaking Shodai and kills Cobra that way. No, we've just established the God's Knights are going to be involved here. So it's going to be one of the God's Knights that's going to stab Cobra in the back. Maybe Shanks' brother, and then it's going to be another member of God's Knights that's been sent to assassinate Doflamingo. This is like they're enacting, it's like, okay, we're done fucking around here. All right, we're eliminating Cobra. He's asking too many questions. Doflamingo, we're eliminating him. Too much of a liability. We're eliminating everybody that has a liability, and we're taking over. All right, that's the way the government's rolling. If you want to play hardball with this revolutionary crap, we're going to play hardball with this. God's Knights, let's go, you know? And like I said, hockey out the ass, powerful Devil Fruit users, masters of all these crazy wacky powers and martial arts. God's Knights are going to be top level stuff, all right? You know, we gotta see. The only question is, how strong could they be? Because let's say, I was going to say something ridiculous, like if you take... You know how, like, in Bleach, when Squad Zero is introduced, and it's like, the 5 members of Squad Zero are stronger than all 13 squads of the Gotei. And it's like, alright, that's really cool. What if it's like, all 10 members of God's Knights are in a league similar to the Yonko. Dude, that would be badass, but then you question, like, well, why didn't you just use the God's Knights to eliminate the Yonko? Unless this is part of, like, Eames' master plan, or they really did not want to use the God's Knights. The God's Knights are literally like, no, you don't just send them out for whatever. You literally use them when the government is just taking over everything. But at this late stage in the game, and if you're going to introduce a new group at this point in One Piece, they can't just be kind of powerful. You know what I mean? They can't just be like, oh yes, God's Knights, they're on the level of CP9. It's like, pfft, we passed up that benchmark a while ago. They can use Rokushiki. Oh, la-di-da! You know what I mean? No, if you're going to introduce a group that we're genuinely supposed to be fearful of and really intimidated by, they better have the skills to pay the bills. It better be like, oh yes, all 10 of God's Knights, when they work together as a cohesive unit, they're stronger than all 4 Yonko put together. It would be ridiculous. All 4 Yonko, that's kind of an oxymoron. All 4 emperors put together. All of the Yonko put together. That would be ridiculous. Maybe, okay. Maybe not that, but maybe, no, that wouldn't even make sense numerically. It's like when the 10 God's Knights are together, they're stronger than the 7 warlords. Well, yeah, there's 10 of them, so that's not really all that intimidating. I don't know. I'm just saying that you probably don't want to mess with them. They gotta be really strong or else they're just not gonna be a threat. Unless Oda's hyping them up for no reason. Like, oh yes, God's Knights! And it's like, I'll harm you! You know, they're not really strong at all, but I don't think that's the way it's gonna go. I don't think they're gonna be a joke or a gag. I think this is gonna be pretty serial, alright? So, anyway, that's the review. That's the video. Hope you guys enjoyed. Came out a little early this week, but we've had so many breaks lately, I think it's fair. Okay, with that being said, this will be Teching signing out. Thanks for watching, everybody. Later. Gators. There's a shelf there.